Welcome, everyone, to the Cardano Effect podcast, episode 66. The purpose of this podcast is to take high-level developer information and projects that are occurring within the Cardano space and break them down into bite-sized, consumable pieces of information for everyday use. I'm your host, Philippe, and let's get this podcast started. Rick and myself are the hosts for the Cardano Effect podcast today, and we have a very, very special guest. Rick will be announcing him shortly. I want to remind everyone is if you really want to support this podcast, the best thing you can do is make sure that you subscribe to our channel. We just passed over 6,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel. We have a lot of audio downloads as well. We're syndicated, and we want as much support as possible to try to boost our SEO and get this podcast out to broader members of the Cardano community and broader members of blockchain in general. So anyone that's interested, please subscribe and continue following our content. We take both positive and negative feedback in stride, and we look to improve our podcast week after week, episode after episode. So without further ado, I want to let everyone know our financial disclaimer. None of what we say on this podcast is financial advice. Remember, you are your best financial advisor, and if you don't think you are, you need to find someone who's qualified to do so. So without further ado, Rick, how are you doing this morning? What's going on? What's happening?
Hey, I'm doing great, Philippe. Thanks for asking. I'm very excited because we had this Shelly launch on December 16th. So that was great. It went out to the whole community. I would like to give a shout out to IOHK both for launching Shelly successfully. Shout out to the community for hanging in there. And also thank IOHK for sponsoring this podcast. We very much appreciate your support for the podcast. And remind any new viewers to the podcast that it is available on audio on all audio streaming apps. We're on up to 70 apps at this point and all major streaming platforms. If your app can't connect to the Cardano Effect, let us know at thecardanoeffect@gmail.com, and I'll see about getting your app connected to our stream. And so today we have Mr. Bakyt Azimkanov with us. He is the Global PR Communications and Marketing Director at the Cardano Foundation. And Bakyt, welcome, and thank you for being here. We very much appreciate you coming onto the podcast and taking the time to talk with us in the audience. So how are you doing today, sir?
Good. Thank you for inviting, and it's good to be here. I've been looking forward to this, and now after 7 months with the project, here I am.
All right, that sounds good. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself so that we'd like the audience to get to know who's Bakyt Azimkanov? You have a lot of responsibilities there at the Cardano Foundation with what you do. So tell us a little bit of background about yourself. Where'd you grow up and what have you been doing prior to the Cardano Foundation?
Absolutely. So I was born in the former Soviet Union in a country that's what's known now as Kyrgyz Republic. I spent most of my childhood there, and when I was 16, I got a U.S. State Department scholarship to go to the States. Went to high school in Washington State, spent a year there, and came back home to study journalism and public relations. That's my undergrad degree, and did a couple of exchanges. Went to Eastern Europe and decided to do my master's. I did a double master's, one in media studies in Denmark and the Netherlands, and my second master's is in business and finance journalism from the City University here in London. And initially, I came to London for 6 months. I thought I'm gonna, do my studies and go back home and just, FedEx my dissertation. But I ended up staying, and now I've been here for 13 years, and London became my home. So that's briefly about me. And my hobbies include reading lots of historical and scientific books. And I'm a major astronomy fan. I'm an astrophile, and I will always admit that I'm fascinated by space. I like cooking, but I don't do much of it these days. And before Cardano Foundation, I was at a global accounting firm, EY, also known as Ernst & Young. There I was global media relations and social media lead for transaction advisory services, lots about M&A, mergers and acquisitions, so private equity, divestments, very, very specialist content, and I spent 5 years. And before that, I practiced journalism. I was at a US Congress-funded radio station called Radio Liberty, Radio Free Europe, and did a bit of a freelancing work for the British Broadcasting Corporation, and I was bonds reporter for Thomson Reuters, global debt capital markets, very much so. In a nutshell, my professional background was in finance journalism and finance communications. And now I am at the Cardano Foundation, and I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, wow, you bring a wealth of
Yes.
experience with you, all kinds of different background. That's amazing because I think we kind of need that in crypto and in Cardano because it's such a new field. So I guess all that experience in different fields will help you out being the global director of PR and communications there at the Cardano Foundation. So what's a day in the life of Bakyt like at the Cardano Foundation now that you're there?
Well, I must say, sometimes if I go to bed at midnight, I consider it early. If I go at 2 o'clock, 2 a.m., then I consider, okay, the day has been quite jam-packed and I deserve to sleep. I cannot say every day is similar, and I cannot say that there is a certain routine that I have because we're trying to cram in almost 4 years of work that should have been done into 1 year at the Cardano Foundation, and everybody is pulling their weight, and we're all doing 2 to 3 jobs. One person does 2 to 3 jobs, and it is very difficult. And my typical day starts with, I must admit, I wake up, I open my eyes, I look at my emails, and by then there will be tons of emails from Asia Pacific and the US, and I start to respond to some of them, and then I have a team call, catch up with individual team members, and I get on with all, and I respond to all of the external partners, like our external colleagues as well. And what can I say? There is no set routine. It's a lot of the times when I first joined, I thought every deadline was urgent, everything was urgent, and every project was a priority. And now I think with more people, we're seeing that it's gotten a bit better. There's more structure, especially with the expanded council and the whole team is new. There's a lot more, there's a better framework, there's a better structure as well. And we're streamlining a lot of work, and I cannot say we're there yet. And I think it's going to be a constant journey because we're not satisfied with just what we have. We want to improve and build on the success, and we know there's a long, long journey ahead. And it's not an easy journey, I must say. It's some days you just want to pull hair out of places where you're not supposed to pull hair out of, and some days you want to scream and shout, and some days you say, okay, I deserve a glass of wine after this day.
That sounds great. That sounds great. You were telling me previously about the employee expansion at the Cardano Foundation. So you're saying that there's a lot of work. You have to jam pack 4 years of work into, I don't know, the next 12 months or so. So does that mean that the Cardano Foundation, I know you're probably over 20 employees now. Does that mean that you're going to continue expanding to get all the goals met? Or is this something that can be handled by the current team that's employed by the Cardano Foundation?
We're definitely expanding, and we are more than 20 people, as you rightly pointed out, across 16 locations in 12 countries. We're very international, so we have people representing 17 countries. So it's quite a very diverse team for people of 20, for a team of 22 people. And yes, we're expanding. We're going to expand. One department that will see that expansion and growth is communications department. So I'm hoping to add more people to the communications function, and we're also adding more technical skills because as we get more responsibilities for the Cardano next year, we'll need those skills that we don't have currently in-house. And we will also, we're constantly monitoring various channels and tools to see what community needs as well. And by community, there are a lot of different components that comprise community. We're also looking into expanding, adding different skill sets in that department as well. So yes, I think in 2020, hopefully you'll see a lot more new faces, and they'll all be probably challenged to hit the ground running. I think that's the rule.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, that's
Interesting.
awesome. Well, I noticed there's at least 6 community managers that I know of, including the community team leads, and you just have 2 more personnel who've joined, and so I don't know, maybe there's even more than 6, but good job on those hires because we look through them in social media, we see them out on all the different forms of media, Reddit and Telegram, and on Twitter and everything, and that part seems to really have picked up well. It really has. So well done, good job.
That was my priority when I joined 7 months ago. I inherited the community management team on an interim basis, and so my number one task was to ensure that we are responding to the community needs. And I admit that sometimes we didn't do it fast enough or quick enough, but we are a Swiss entity, and we need to, you know, we need to operate in that legal framework. And some things took a bit longer, but I think the current community management team, I think we have very good people. We have people from various backgrounds, professional backgrounds. They're all passionate. And the next step would be, adding community managers with skill sets that we don't currently have in geographies where we're not present. Geographic expansion is very important for us. And I think also skill sets, because what is community? Community is it's people, on our social media channels. It's the governments, it's the corporates, it's enterprises. It's quite big, and I think we always forget the definition of what community means. And our community there is a community that we track that that follow our channels. And I think there are over 1 million people at the moment. But there's also a community that's wider. So our potential partners, the governments that we work with, the policymakers, they're also our community. And I think our next community managers will be hopefully skilled in those aspects, policies, governance, enterprise, and corporates. These are the skills that we will need in 2020, and these are the experiences that we will look for next year.
Okay. You speak on that tenet of growing the global Cardano community, which is a pillar on the Cardano Foundation website. So that's very important. So let's transition over to your day-to-day as far as how you grow this global Cardano community. There was a recent article saying that the Cardano Foundation is doing a brand refresh and working with a company called McCann. So McCann is a very, very large company. They've been around since 1912. They have over 10,000 employees. And for those that are not familiar with McCann, they did the Coca-Cola "It's a Real Thing" kind of slogan, and they work with a lot of different worldwide recognized companies in order to provide slogans and increase their marketing outreach. And they've obviously been around for over 100 years, so they know what they're doing. They generate quite a lot in revenue each year, and they're a very large company. They're trusted by many different companies. So what led the Cardano Foundation? First of all, what is a brand refresh? And second of all, why McCann? And are we going to have some sort of slogan in the future? Are we looking for some sort of Coca-Cola-like slogan for Cardano? Sorry if I wrapped so many questions in one, but yeah. So what is a brand refresh? Let's start with that.
Well, yes, let's start with that. I think brand refresh is not, I just want to make it very clear because I think there was confusion. It's not a complete rebrand, because the brand refresh in this instance means we're reappraising the current brand. We are evaluating what is the brand's value at the moment. That includes brand audit, brand surveys, and some people within the ecosystem and outside the ecosystem are being surveyed. So some of the ambassadors have been selected from various locations with different backgrounds. They'll be interviewed and by McCann. And the aim of this exercise is if I step back and talk about our brand, the brand itself developed organically. It's wrapped around Charles's vision about Cardano, what it is and what it should be. But there has never been any formal alignment of the brand. It just evolved organically, and every person will have their own definition what Cardano is for them and what Cardano stands. And when you specify the question and say, what actually does Cardano stand for? What do you think they stand for? They will not know, or they will have their own version. So we just want to bring it all together first, reappraise our brand, do a brand audit and brand survey, see what people actually think our brand is, and see if it matches our own definition of what we are and what we want to, and whether it's aligned to our mission, to our objectives, and to our vision. So that will be the first step, and we're calling it the discovery phase. And there were 20 people selected by McCann to be interviewed for the brand survey, and there were people from all over the world. So, and that was quite key for us. As I mentioned, diversity is very important for us, and people from different countries with different linguistic skills were selected to be interviewed by McCann, and Cardano Foundation will not have any record to those interviews, and also people who are not ambassadors as well, within IOHK, CF, and Amerigo, and see what their vision is. At the same time, there will be a brand audit done by McCann to see what is the external opinion about us, and does it match? And if it's a mismatch, how far is the perception gap in between? So this is the first stage of something that's probably going to take some time, and we are doing it in several steps. And we recognize that it should have been done a lot earlier, but now with the Cardano Foundation was very busy actually cleaning up, previous past mistakes for the first 10 months, and now we actually have time to do something that we're supposed to do. And we want to do it good, and we want to do it well, and that's why we didn't want to rush into it. This is a Cardano Foundation mandate, so we have researched and we've identified McCann was most suitable. After a few meetings with them, we decided to award the mandate of reappraising the brand for Cardano and for the Cardano Foundation. And Cardano Foundation, as the custodian of the blockchain, actually, we were supposed to do this a lot earlier when the foundation was set up. But as you know, for objective reasons, that hasn't been done. And now, after we've put more than 100 control measures to not repeat the previous administration's mistakes, we now finally have time to do things like this. And second question, why McCann? They have really good credentials. They work with biggest brands, and they're one of the few teams that actually understand blockchain. They understand the value creation of the technology and what it could do. And I must say, it's very hard to find a team that actually was willing to take on something that's so new, something, an industry that's still maturing. I mean, blockchain, and earlier you asked the question, what's my normal day like? And probably one of the things is that we make rules as we go along because the industry itself is not mature. We are, I hate the word blazing a trail, but actually we are bulldozing a trail for the industry. And part of it means a good brand. It might include a slogan. This will depend on the brand audit and brand survey. It might, it might include a lot of different things. It could include as simple things like color palette or typography, or it could just leave the way things are. It could go a lot of different ways. Personally, what I'm expecting is that they will help us to actually narrow down the perception gap between what we think Cardano is and what the external audience think Cardano is, and also to help us to hone the messages, the overall narrative, the story. What is the story behind Cardano? What is the story should be like? What story do we want to tell? After all, brand is a narrative. It's a narrative through pictures, through videos, through certain messages. So all of this, we want to bring it together. We want to ensure that it works for all kinds of audiences, specialist audiences, non-specialists. It works for devs, for governments, for corporates. And I must say, it's a mammoth task to ensure that we have something that everybody can relate to. We want to make it relatable as well. We don't want to alienate, for example, a middle-aged state official who has no idea about how blockchain works, but would like to integrate blockchain into their system. The same goes for corporate. So, and it is, so hopefully we will, so the first stage, the interviews or brand surveys taking place in the first week of January, with, and then we will have the first preliminary results end of January. And after that, we'll get the recommendations of, what the audit and the survey revealed and what direction we should take or what tweaks we should make. And as a result, we will start going to the next stage of the brand reappraisal. That will include visual elements, visual and storytelling and narrative elements. This might be a bit boring and too technical, but every message that's crafted needs to speak and needs to, every person should feel that they say, oh, wow, I didn't know that. When, for example, when we want Cardano to be synonymous with a lot of things. And for example, Hoover, it is a brand name, but it's also used as a verb. Let me hoover the house. We want Cardano to be the same. And with it, the foundation as the custodian of the blockchain. And the council is very excited about this. And I think the whole team is very excited. And one of my team members said, it's like a thriller. You never know what you're going to find out, and you'll keep biting your nails. And come January, I'll be at that stage, probably waiting in anticipation what the brand survey will find out.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
And, Bakyt, everything you just explained is what people have been looking for. I just learned so much from you.
Yeah.
Just by hearing you explain that. I didn't even realize that we don't have this brand. We have, there's kind of a slogan, Cardano growing a global Cardano or something like that. But how do you market? Because I'll see it on Telegram and on Twitter a lot. When marketing, how marketing, when are you going to market? And the answer is usually, we're not ready for market. We don't have anything to market. Well, Shelly just launched globally on a test net, and it sounds like it's time to get ready for marketing. I had no idea there was this gap, but now that you explained it so clearly, I realized there is a gap between what we perceive Cardano as and what it could be seen as or should be seen as when it's, because that leads to the next question, when mass adoption? Well, it starts right there with what you're doing, and that is getting this basically ground truth analysis by McCann, or where are we at right now, right? It's almost like a blind survey where you don't know what's going to happen.
Exactly, and it is, hence I referenced it's a bit like thriller, and when marketing will start, I guess. Shelly has launched testnet, and this is a good time actually to start this exercise. And I realized that we announced our mandate on Friday, although Charles reference to McCann here, mentioned that we had meetings, but the official announcement came on Friday, and I realized it was such a busy time to announce something like this, and the announcement itself might have gotten lost. And I'm actually glad that I have the chance to speak about it now. It is, I think, what's important about this exercise, it's also telling our story the way it should be heard, because the brand and our story, our slogan, a lot of things were just evolved organically as we went along. And also, when we market Cardano, the blockchain, we also need to market it to corporates, to enterprises that will use it and adopt it. And hence, part of it is, and this, we've spoke about this many times, and Charles mentioned it a few times as well, to start decoupling Cardano, the blockchain, from his personal brand. He is Charles, CEO of Wyohackathon. He's the creator and brains behind Cardano, and he also wants to see Cardano, the blockchain, to be decoupled from that. And hence, it was very important for me to ensure that he was present at our meeting in Dublin with McCann. And this is Cardano Foundation initiated project. It's Cardano Foundation, we're a finance project as well, and we're leading on the project. And we are involving a lot of people within the ecosystem. We're involving project leads from Wyohackathon. We're involving scientists and academics, because it's also important for McCann to hear their story as well, because the end product of this exercise should be something that is inclusive, something that works for everyone. And I know we can't please everyone. This is the reality of life. But by finding out different thoughts and different opinions from academics, engineers, from commercial people, from ambassadors, and from critics, from journalists. So we're trying to collect this opinion, set of opinions from different groups of people, and find what is the common thread, what unites them. Is it the philosophy of the project, or is it the ultimate vision? What is that one thing, or maybe two things, maybe three things that unites everyone, and how we can weave those things in our overall narrative, and how overall narrative could be worked into various specific messages for different audiences. And these exercises take 2 to 3 years, but we're trying to cram it into 6 months. And hence I have a lot more gray hair now.
I didn't notice.
Well, I hide them well.
You hide it well. You do. I'm glad you guys are doing that, because here's my biggest concern with blockchain is people cover an entire spectrum in blockchain. And some people are so wild west. They're so hard set on absolute complete decentralization to where it's the point of chaos. Well, you can't have chaos and mass adoption. I mean, nobody out there wants to adopt your chaos. They already have their chaos, right? It's like, so if you can, organize the chaos, for example, corporations, they don't want chaos. They want to see, is this a professional, effective thing? So some things should be decentralized, and some things should be organized, and some things should be coordinated. And it's kind of like, the technology can be centralized, and people can have coalition. The technology is decentralized completely, trustless. But when it comes to the people and the corporations, there has to be some understanding, right? There's got to be a little bit of organization, a little bit of understanding of who's who in the zoo, what are they doing, You can't have complete chaos.
I agree with you, Rick.
No one will adopt it.
I agree with you.
And you can't be brandless, because people say, "What am I adopting here? I don't know what I'm adopting. I don't know what I'm using."
Absolutely, it's and one of the other things that a lot of people maybe don't realize, especially people who are not familiar with Cardano, well, they see it as a blockchain only. Yes, it is a blockchain technology, but part of our brand will be, it's not just a blockchain. Our ultimate vision is financial operating system. And it's not going to happen overnight. I mean, if you look at all other industries, they were not built overnight. They weren't marketed overnight. And the world is moving at such a speed that you have to catch up with that, and you have to cram in a lot of things in very short time span. And hopefully, ultimately, we will have a brand that will speak to a lot of various different groups, and that will ultimately be for us a trampoline towards that becoming financial operating system, or a global marketplace for a lot of different groups. And it is, yes, and it's important that Cardano blockchain is marketed in a way that speaks volumes about what it is, what it can do, what it will do for specific corporation or government or enterprise that will adopt it. And it is quite important. And I think you mentioned decentralization, and a lot of the times there are some misunderstandings about what it actually is. And I always give this example of city lights. all these lights that are installed, across the sidewalk, they're people's, they're everybody's. It's for people to use, but who maintains them? That's the municipal government.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think decentralization is a bit like that, or should be like that. It's for everyone to use, it's for everybody's benefit, but there should be somebody taking care of it. So the custody of those city and the municipal lights are with the city government, and they go and replace the bulb and the wiring, etc., etc. So as a custodian, I think the Cardano Foundation is that custodian.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. I'd like to add that, Rick and I started this podcast over a year ago, and we did an episode, When Mass Adoption. And we joked at the beginning, like, when taco. I know it's a pun, but this encompasses what mass adoption is. Like, we're trying to reach the everyday people. And crypto has this mentality of just complete anarchy. And how can you be an anarchist, but at the same time you want support from banks and financial institutions? No one's going to join, of course, your party. It's not going to happen. So there needs to be some sort of bridge. But referring back to McCann, because if you look at their website and you look at all the partnerships that they have, all these brands have successful messages, and they have, like, you look at a MasterCard, for example. And I think that that's probably most analogous to Cardano, not in the sense of what they're doing, but it is a financial rail for people to use and spend money. And they're advertising to you and and they're also advertising to small, medium, and large enterprises. And I envision that Cardano is going to be utilized for multiple subsets of people. So you're going to have the small, medium, large enterprise, and you're also going to be targeting the unbanked, So there's a wide range of people that you have to target your message to. So once we get that message, or once we get that direction from McCann as to where the brand needs to go, what's the next step? Because these companies here, Coca-Cola, MasterCard, LinkedIn, I mean, they have endless, and Microsoft, they have endless budgets to push commercials, whether that, and they have endless budgets. Their pockets never run out, and they can push media, whether that be through the television or through print. They have various ways to market. So after we get this brand refresh, how do we get that ball rolling to the next step? Is that too far to think of, or is there a step? Is there a plan to push that even further?
It's a bit too far, and we haven't gotten to that stage, but my personal opinion, so once we have an overall narrative and specific messages for different kinds of audience that is based on the overall narrative, my personal, obviously our budget is not endless, and my hope is that our community will actually jump in and help us to reach the audiences that we cannot reach. We're only, slightly more than 20 people at the Cardano Foundation, and hopefully that, and they will also take part in this process to tell us, okay, this is the message that we've developed. And they might say, well, let's tailor this message and localize it to this particular market, or to this country, or to this language, the speakers, or this industry. That's why community is important in this exercise. When we come to that stage, that we will look for their guidance. It might be a specialist, from different industry, that you might say, I come from an insurance industry, and your message should be tailored to this insurance industry, and it should sound like this. Or I come from Uganda, and in Uganda, your message should be a bit different. It's just the same thing, but slightly differently worded. So it should be localized and customized, because one thing we know, one size doesn't fit all. While Cardano wants to be the global platform for everyone, we also understand that everybody has different needs. They have different reasons to adopt it, and we need to tailor our message to that audience. And this is my personal opinion, but we haven't gotten there yet. Where the current phase will end, will conclude in March. And once that's done, we will look at all the results, and then reassess what needs to be done and how, and what direction. And there will be another meeting, with the executives and all the stakeholders, and then we will take it to the next level. So, but my personal opinion is that community should also be involved by providing their specialist view from, you know, the industries they represent, the countries they represent, and different groups they represent. That way we can give all these overall narrative and different messages and say, here, how would you tailor it and customize it in your industry, in your country, for your group?
Yeah. You know what I like about this? You're taking a one step at a time approach, which is good, because it's how do you know where you're going if you don't know where you're standing? And that's what this will
Absolutely.
do. And I hadn't thought of that before. I just thought about it because I'm listening to you telling me this stuff, and I'm thinking, oh yeah, so you got to know where you're standing before you know where you're going. How are you going to make a vision for where you're going? You know what I think the hardest part about your job would be is defining what is my product that I'm providing to this to the user. It's not like I'm buying a taco, or I'm buying a coffee cup, or I'm buying a service. It's more nebulous. It's kind of vague and hard to
It's a
define.
vision.
It's a vision and a way of doing things where, like with Microsoft, it's easy. I can buy their product and put it on my computer, and I know what I have. But yours is kind of a bigger thing. Like when you walk into a meeting, I can't imagine what the kind of questions they ask you, at corporate level meetings, because it's like, well, what is the product, or what is the solution? Like if you're offering solutions are a product,
Mm.
training is a product, financial operating systems are products. But I guess if it depends on what problem you're trying to solve for that particular group, that particular customer. But we got to start somewhere. You got to start
It's a
and say,
tough one.
what are we and what are we selling? What is our product?
Absolutely.
What are we?
And that's why the product managers will also have a say in this exercise, and also business development people, because ultimately people who go and and see these business developers and product managers, I also want their vision. How do they see it? I want, so part of, so one of the things that I'm doing, I know we call it Project Renovare actually at CF. It means Project Refresh in Latin, and getting by these different various groups within the ecosystem and outside, buyer groups, seller groups, and all, developers, academics, just finding exactly what do they want, also what do they want out of this too, because as I said, it's very important for us to be inclusive. It's inclusive also, inclusive opinions as well, and hopefully kind of boil this down to a one line, a one sentence narrative, and one line and several one liners. So, and sometimes it's very difficult because the pitfall is like you always want to please everyone. But once you realize that you can't please everyone, that you can't please all different fragmented audiences, you'll just go with what works and what supports your overall mission and your vision.
Bakyt, that's a really good point. Towards the beginning of my personal YouTube channel, I did a video saying, what is the elevator pitch for Cardano? So basically saying that, how would you talk to the average person about Cardano? And people that have asked me about Cardano or have told about Cardano, you realize, wait a minute, there's a gap to try to even explain the project. You start explaining it, and then you're like, wait a minute, this is too advanced right now. Let me back up. And you often start using like Bitcoin as a reference, as a starting reference, and then working your way up to Cardano. And the person's completely lost by the time you even get to proof of stake, or even mention the word Cardano or blocks or anything like that, or stake delegation. So creating that one line, or creating a sense of understanding for the average person is completely necessary, because it's not necessarily that we're building we're building extremely advanced products, but they need to be communicated to everyday people, especially if we're trying to be the financial stack. You walk into Bank of America or Chase or Wells Fargo, they don't tell you how the ATM works, but it just works for you. You can go up to a teller. The average person can go up to the teller, withdraw money from their account. It's relatively easy, even though the steps behind it are a lot more complicated. So I think that's wonderful. Yeah.
And that also keeps me, up at night, because yeah, it's quite a big undertaking. And a couple of days ago, a colleague of mine told me, like, you have to think that you were leading of what could become the world's biggest and best blockchain project, and you were in uncharted territory, and you just kind of bulldozing your way around. And I thought, my God, and I felt very overwhelmed.
Thanks for that response, Bakyt. I think it's a strategy that needs to consistently evolve. I mean, there's multiple phases that are happening concurrently within the project. You have Shelly that hasn't hit mainnet yet. You have Goguen next year. You have governance. So you have smart contracts. So many different products that are being released. So I'm sure that your message has to be tailored as we go through the roadmap. And speaking about projects that the Cardano Foundation is working on, let's move over. Well, it happened in the past, earlier this year, right after the summer, I believe August, September, that range. Let's talk about the Wyohackathon. And what was the role of the Cardano Foundation, the Wyohackathon, and what was the purpose of the Wyohackathon?
So Wyohackathon was there to bring people from across the world, actually, to highlight that Wyoming is so far ahead of its neighbors. The legislation is so blockchain friendly and crypto friendly. It's to just highlight their role and what they're doing. And they have ambitions. They have plans to become, if not the world's, but at least North America's blockchain center. And I think they're on the right path. And the state senators came to the Wyohackathon, and it was also to develop the local talent, because Wyoming is known for a lot of people from Wyoming. You know, once they finish school, they leave the state, and they have a shortage of skills. And also to diversify the state's economy, they heavily rely on mining industry and farming. So they want to attract young people and people with technical skills into the state and diversify their economy. And the Cardano Foundation's role was there to actually, we sponsored one of the challenges, this Cardano Challenge, but ultimately the way we see it, and our role was there to enable and support future innovators, because those kids between ages of 9 to 14 from a tiny community called Shoshone in central Wyoming, they were building, they were writing escrow contracts, and seeing the passion in their eyes and how well versed they were, those kids actually inspired me. And the foundation being there and supporting these kids, and we call them actually future innovators, and they are the innovators of the future. They will actually go and bring the additional skills that Wyoming needs, and they will help the state to diversify its economy. And mind you, it's the least populated state in the country, in the US, and what they're trying to do is admirable. And the foundation being there on the ground, interacting with those kids and everybody who are interested in Cardano and how they want to use Cardano in the state. And we had a few meetings there with potential users of Cardano, people who might adopt it, and it's great. And but as I said, what impressed me the most was seeing those kids from Shoshone. I mean, I didn't even hear anything about Shoshone before, and going to Wyoming, one of the states that's not known for tourism, that was something. That was quite an experience. And I think, as I said, I mean, the passion in those kids' eyes just inspired me. And instead of us empowering the future innovators, actually it was the future innovators empowering us to do more, to try more, to actually build the future, not for us, but for them. That was something beautiful. And I came so elated after that.
I can tell. I can't imagine 9 to 14-year-olds writing escrow contracts, let alone writing escrow contracts using computer code or Marlis or Plutus or Marlo, or whichever one of the programming languages they were using. That's pretty amazing.
That's impressive, Rick. I mean, that's middle school. I mean, that's crazy. That's crazy. The amount of the skill set you need to have at such a young, early age in order to successfully code and be working on some of the next generation technology. That's impressive. And shout out to Tony from Shoshone. And I I forgot the other person's name, but the teachers of the kids, because they're obviously doing something great if they're actually incorporating blockchain into the curriculum, which is wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a really heartwarming story. I'm glad you told us about that. That's what's nice to hear. You see pictures in the media, but when you really hear the story told about what you've seen there, that part is really cool.
Agreed. Agreed.
And at some point, you just want to hug those kids and just, I don't know. It was so heartwarming, and it was really touching, and it was special.
Yeah, the pictures were cool though.
Yeah,
I've seen them
they
in
were.
the media, and it looked great.
They were.
And that's the kind of seeds that need to be planted and grow, and they'll continue to grow. They set a great
Absolutely. That's why we call them the innovators of the future.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows in 10, 20 years if Cardano is still pumping out and it's on top of the game. It's one of these kids that may be building the DApp of the future or that escrow contract of the future that may just push us to even a new level. So that's definitely important. Wonderful news.
Oh yeah. Hey, is it time to go over to Reddit, or do we want to ask our crazy questions first?
Should we do Reddit and then crazy questions? Let's
do Reddit.
Okay. So we have a couple questions from Reddit. We got this post out a little bit late, Bakyt, so we apologize. Rick and I have been just messing with our nodes the entire weekend. It's been very stressful for pool operators, and it's still stressful. So
it's the combination of excitement where you just want to keep going and going and going, keep playing around with stuff, and then you hit a wall, and then you're like, and then the stress sets in.
Yeah, so
I know what you mean, Philippe. I know what you mean, man.
We'll talk about that on the live stream. But so the first question, let me get the first question. I'm sorting by best. The first question, we have two questions. The first question is from Asus78, and Asus78 says, "What kind of marketing tools will they utilize to create awareness?" I'm assuming that they're talking about the Cardano Foundation. "What is the target audience, and when will the first phase begin and end?" So you answered some of these questions, but if you want to elaborate, be my guest.
Marketing tools. That's an interesting question. And as you know, since Nathan took over the foundation, we actually built we've actually built the comms function and comms PR marketing function in May. So it's very new. We are looking into various tools. Marketing tools, and at the moment what we're utilizing lots of events. We realize that seeing in a personal contact and eye-to-eye contact is important at this stage, especially after what foundation has gone through. It's important for us to ensure that we are credible, we're real, we're people. Here we are, we're in flesh. And we've had over 120 events, meetups, and conferences in 2019 alone, because it was very important for us to actually take ourselves out there and ensure that people know that we are here, that the foundation, has reemerged, a bit like Phoenix Bird. That one, and we also utilize Google Analytics to ensure that to check what messages are working, what are not working, and we're hoping to bring in some external tools for that. And most of this will also depend on the McCann exercise, and the phase one will hopefully begin once the McCann exercise is complete, and we will know a lot more. And our target audience, it's corporates, enterprises, financial institutions, governments, developers, non-for-profit sector, and all the major industries. So these are our target audience, but I'm sure we'll add a lot more once we have a product. It's a big question, but it's a good. I like it. It's a good question.
Is, and it flows right along with what you've been talking about so far.
120 meetups. That's impressive. That is impressive.
Meetups, events, and conferences.
All
events.
Okay.
Not on the same place either, right?
No.
Not even on the same side of the planet.
Has every continent been represented in those meetups events?
Yes, apart from the South Pole.
Okay. Yep. The penguins didn't show up, huh?
Yes, they didn't show up.
No.
Penguins from Antarctica. The other 6 continents you got covered, right?
Yes.
That's a good deal. That'll work. Penguins don't really carry around Bitcoin and Cardano and all that stuff. They do Linux, though.
Yeah.
So We'll go. We'll hit the next question. These questions are perfect. Thanks, guys. Thank you,
Yeah.
Asus78. Thank you very much. And also, Crypto Gato. Crypto Gato. Is that Crypto Cat? Is that what that means? And
Yeah.
Crypto Gato asks, what is, in your opinion, the CF's #1 objective for 2020? Perfect question, flows right along. And you can see where Bakyt had to lead us into this, because people want to say, hey, where's the light at the end of the tunnel? And we're like, hey, we need to find the tunnel first. Then we'll find out.
Absolutely.
So what's the objective for 2020, #1?
Oh, that's a big question. I would say it will driving the adoption and use cases. I mean, driving adoption that's our #1 objective, and that's also #1 mission of the foundation. And as I've told, and I think as a lot of people told before as well, we've taken tangible steps towards it. I mean, saying it is so easy, driving the adoption, but how you get there, how you map your journey, and in a way, it's like calculating your flight past the moon. It's very difficult, but once you get there, you will know that the reward is big. So #1 objective is driving the adoption, and it will remain so.
That sounds good.
Yeah, you've got a mission. Sounds like you got a mission.
Well, I mean,
last year the objective was, what are the objectives?
Yeah.
I don't even know.
Yeah, now it's completely changed.
Now we know what the objectives are.
And starting with a company like McCann, I mean, early in the year, I mean, I think that's the recipe for success. All these other companies, I mean, we're talking about mass adoption. This is the way to get to mass adoption, at least the first steps. So it will be interesting to watch your progress. A lot of people in the Cardano space, and crypto in general, crypto markets have been depressed for so long. I mean, it's been a couple of years. People have invested a lot of money. People have lost a lot of money. It's a very stressful and emotional experience. But people need to take the time to understand that building a business takes time. And the Cardano Foundation has had its share of troubles with the previous administration, and that's been flushed out. So any new hires that the Cardano Foundation implements, they're doing their due diligence, they're doing their research. But the community needs to realize that you need to give these people time, and you have to give them some time to start working on their projects before you heavily criticize or you make a comment about this or that or the direction of where the Cardano Foundation is going. Me personally, I've been very happy with what the Cardano Foundation has been doing over the past several months. And I understand the direction you're going. And now it's time to see these people come in and implement what they're supposed to implement. But we have to give it time. We have to give it time.
Absolutely. And you mentioned about, the blockchain communities and the space. I mean, I think we are, in terms of the industry, we are at the trove of disillusionment. We're at the bottom. And after that will come the slope of enlightenment. And then it's going to be a plateau of productivity. I mean, we are, because there's a lot of hype, lots of hype. And then suddenly people realize not everything, that shines is gold. And I think while some projects might be a bit below, but I think Cardano is at the, we're on the right path. So we're in the slope of enlightenment. We're enlightening ourselves as well by finding out what we are as a brand, who we are, and also from our technology side as well. We're not going mainstream immediately. We're testing. So hence Shelley said about testing. So we're taking these little steps to ensure that when the product hits the market, that it's a good product. It will never be a finished product because we'll always keep improving it. And then once that's done, we'll hit the plateau of productivity. Then it's going to be steady, but that's going to require time. And as you rightly point out, good things take time.
I think that was a perfect analogy, Bakyt. I really followed that. Thank you.
Yeah. And that's a great way to bring us kind of to a wrap up, but we do have to go over a few funny things. A few things. We got to ask you a question, all right, Bakyt?
Okay.
Two questions. You got to pick one, all right? So this is our going thing. All right. One question is, have you ever been to prison and why? And the other question is, what is the craziest thing you've ever done? You got to pick one of the two and answer that. Which one do you want to do?
Well, because I haven't been to prison, I'll pick the second one.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, the craziest thing I've done, man. I can tell you, when I finished my undergrad, I was so in love with someone. I just bought a plane and went across the ocean. And then it didn't end well, but that was the craziest thing. You're just like, okay, well, you're just barely 20, and you have this, I know you're very young, and you're very passionate, and just, okay, I'm gonna hop on a plane, and went completely different side of the world, and that that got my heart broken. But you know what? That's the craziest thing, and I think was, when I think of it now, I must have been very brave to do that.
So just out of nowhere, you bought this plane ticket and went across the planet and just found out, okay, boom, it just blew up. Man, they make movies about stuff like that.
And it just happened, okay, went there, and then, okay, I guess the feeling is not mutual, and that's it. So that was it. So, but you do silly things when you're young. I guess it's just one of these things. So I think that was the craziest thing, just to go complete place, completely different side of the planet, and it was crazy, I think.
That seems like an emotionally draining experience. Yeah, that sounds wild.
But I learned a lot from it, actually.
Yeah.
Well, there's always.
Was it a short fused decision, like a 1-day decision? Like, you know what? I'm getting on a plane. I'm going to go over there, and I'm going to lay it. Whatever happens, happens. Boom.
It was like that. It was just like that. So yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's the craziest thing you've ever done. That's, some people, it's like jumping off a cliff or shooting a can of Fix-A-Flat or with a 12 gauge or something like that. But, that's really cool.
Yeah.
That's something more human.
Yeah, that is something
more
human.
It's not a one-off.
Yeah. It's cool in retrospect. I'm sure when it was happening, it was probably not cool whatsoever.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it wasn't cool. But actually, I mean, it taught me a lot of things, and in retrospect, when I look at it, I said to myself, wow, I must have been brave, because I wouldn't be able to do anything like that now. I'm wiser now, older, hopefully.
Yeah, it's like touching a hot stove. You did it once. You don't need to do that again.
Yeah,
exactly.
Touch a hot stove. Burned my hand the last time. Probably burn my hand again, right?
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well,
it is. Final words, though.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Bakyt, for joining us once again. We really appreciate you. We really appreciate your time. It was an honor having you on this podcast. You're welcome on this podcast anytime. We hope to have you back, whenever you want. I hope you have a great holiday season, and we can reconnect at the beginning of next year, and hopefully we can hear more about what the Cardano Foundation is doing. We really appreciate you coming on. Do you have any last words for the viewers and listeners of the Cardano Effect, Bakyt?
First of all, it was such a pleasure to be here, and I've been looking forward to this. My message to the viewers and listeners is keep inquiring about the project, do more reading, and come to us with your ideas of how do you see Cardano actually being implemented, and tell us the human side of the things. How will, in your mind, our blockchain will help lives of people, how it will transform industries, how it will make a lot of government services easy. Come to us with specific examples with a human angle. How will it touch people? That will actually also help us to, in our direction. And at this, it's always easy to come, to provide a problem, but at Cardano Foundation, we believe problem equals solution. You highlight a problem, give us alternative solution or your side of the story. And that way we can take things a lot further, a lot quicker. Hence, I'm looking forward to a lot of potential use cases and how you see Cardano changing lives. That's what I would like from the audience.
Okay. I think that's a wonderful note to leave everyone on. And once again, viewers, if you haven't subscribed to the Cardano Effect podcast, please consider. We're going to bring special guests consistently. We're always reaching out, and we had the pleasure of having Bakyt on today. Hopefully we can have him on again. So I hope everyone has a wonderful week. I hope everyone enjoys the holiday season. And until the next episode of the Cardano Effect, bye everyone.